Ayubowan. Good evening, everybody. My name is Damit Kotalawala. Thank you very much for your participation for today's discussion. So we are hosting a discussion after a very long time because of the pandemic and lot of issues, and we had some issues with finding the time of our valuable resources. Without waiting much more, let me introduce the team for you, and I would like to thank following guys for making this real. Heshan, Ruan, Asit for their dedication on planning this specific event. And for the panel, we do have Arshad Zackeriya, Amila Kumaranayaka, Nilesh, and Shehan Marino. When it comes to Amila is a senior DevOps engineer from Zalando, Germany. Zach is from Palo IT. He's a DevOps consultant from Palo IT, Singapore. Nilesh Jayanandana is from Platformer. He's working as a principal software architect. And finally, Shehan Marino is from Cerro, New Zealand. And he's working as a senior engineer, infrastructure DevOps section. Without wasting much time, I would like to start this event. Before starting this event, I would like to announce there is a special gift waiting for you by Arshad Zackeriya, the Phoenix project, the newest version. So whoever successfully answered to the questions, which will be published after this specific session, will be awarded with this valuable book. Hope it will help you to enhance your knowledge and to improve your knowledge on how to do the digital transformation correctly. Okay, thank you very much. Let me give back to Arshad Zackeriya to start this session. Thank you, everybody. Let them start this.
Hi, thanks, Damit, for the introduction. So my name is Zach. Everyone know me as Zach. So I was in this industry for like such a long time now, and we came up with this. The topic is specifically we thought of when it's come to Sri Lankan DevOps community that we are seeing a lot of lacks in what is DevOps, and we thought of like going beyond DevOps and explain and share the knowledge that what is really real DevOps is, because we have this mindset that everyone is thinking knowing Kubernetes, Docker, AWS, Google, those tools are DevOps. So it's wrong. So end of this session, I hope you will understand what is really DevOps is and how important and how cool this concept is. So let's see, like, I would like to share that what happened before DevOps. Like, so we used to have like different teams, like system engineers or like operation engineers and development teams separately. So always I talk this, like there's a the main joke it comes to, all are complaining like, okay, it's working in my local machine and I don't care now, it's not working in the production, it's crashing. So it's so like those, like most of the reasons, and to rectify these issues, like this concept came DevOps, and it comes with different theories they have in the field, but it comes with main like three pillars, we call it, like the culture, the practice, and the tools. So when it comes to the culture is like to be honest, I wouldn't like to call me as a DevOps engineer, because it's not one person work, to be honest. It's like it's a collaborative work, and it should be a good teamwork, team effort, and collaboration. It's not about only this person, but your automation engineers, your developers, your project manager, all should be get together and things get done to give the very fastest and stable releases to the production. So the culture should be it's not easy, because for me, like for us, like as DevOps consultant, what we do is like currently we we go to a company, maybe the enterprise or SMB somewhere, like we enable the DevOps culture there, and we have a process to from the day one to how we are handing over the company, handing over the process to the company, because it's a step-by-step process. So in the industry, like there are a lot of theories and a lot of books are there, a lot of articles about how things are we are doing. So other four engineers in the panel, they have a lot of experience as well, so they will share their experience in these terms as well. So when it's culture, it's really important. You got to be very collaborate. It's not make sure it's not your not only your work, it's a collaborative work, and don't be scared. One thing is we believe in the culture, like it's okay to be mistakes, because it's not a punishable thing. You can do mistakes. So when it's a DevOps culture, we never punish anyone. You can delete things, you can mistakenly do things, but when it comes to practices, we call it like we do automations and best practices. We create policies, we create rules, and we come with like code of conduct to uh, improve the process and practices in the organization. And when it comes tools, only they're coming, like there are millions of tools in the market and cloud providers and a lot of tools. Then the tools will help to achieve those two things. So if we talk it like the culture, practice and tools, the culture will take the main part of that role. So there's such a nice framework called CALMS, which is CALMS. So you can research about that. I'm going to explain what is CALMS is. CALMS is like that's the main framework we follow in DevOps culture, DevOps basically. So C stands for culture, so which I explained before. No one can punishable because you can do mistakes. We are human, right? So you can implement like jet practices. There can be multiple project managers, so on. And A stand for automation. So where the automation comes, I believe I can trust a tool more than a human, because if you set, for example, if you're doing a testing before you deploying the code to the production, you should, before ship, you do the testings. A human can do errors, human can do mistakes, but if you automate set of tools, it's very when you come to the ratio, it's very low that it can be do some errors, because we set the rules and we write the test cases and everything. So I always love to do, before develop, after I did some codings, what I do is like I do write the test case as well. So I can make sure whenever there's a change, I can run my own test and make sure it is stable to go to the next round. So next one is lean. Lean is like it's really super awesome if you can accelerate your releases, your deployments. If you can accelerate, it's very awesome, right? So what you can do is you can cut down a lot of unnecessary things. So you can lean it basically. So for example, if you can get a lot of tools in the market, there are unnecessary things, right? I mean, sometimes we are thinking, okay, why we need these things in this tool? Actually, we don't need these things. So we can, it makes my personal laptop even slower. So I don't want to name the tools. There are such a tools, very famous tools, and there are unnecessary things, but I don't see any use cases. So you can get the feedback. The feedback is really important. Get the feedback, and you can improve those things in the next releases. So M is like measurement. That's one of my favorite part. Amila will be explained today about. He will be doing talking about the DORA metrics and observability part. So the measurement is really important. So we should know what's going on and why it's happening, and we should take actions before we go ahead and do the next releases. I'll give example, like I have personal experience. Like I always take these experience as the slow queries. So after deployment, the end application is very slow, and if you don't have any traces to measure the metrics, so it's a disaster. And most of the times I'm seeing is like everyone is doing the deployments after office times, and everyone is sleepy after 1 o'clock, and they want to go home, and they do the hot fixes, and they inform the PM, okay, we are going to do in the next round, next release. So let's go home and we'll check on Monday. So writing, incident reports, I don't like it, because if as a good DevOps practice, good DevOps engineer, if you're following good DevOps practices, and if you have good culture, you should be able to prevent those things in the future releases. Like if you're having this trouble in this release, okay, next time you should make sure, okay, this is not going to happen. So that's how you maintain it. So there are a lot of nice organizations who are practicing these things. So since I have worked in like overseas countries, I learned a lot of things from other national leaders as well. That's why we thought of, have these community panel and discussion and share our knowledge and experience and to our community members in there. So after M is S coming. S is like the sharing. So sharing is always caring. So that's what we are doing right now here also. So I have seen a lot of engineers in our DevOps LK community group, and they share a lot of links and a lot of articles. I really appreciate that. But same time, I have noticed, I'm not blaming anyone. I would say like there are some people like, they miss the basics. So when I see the questions, okay, we need to explain them, as the as a community, we have to help each other, share the knowledge. So I've noticed a lot of questions like I would say like they're not focusing on best practices. Same time, they are not following the basics. So basic is always important. So that's about comms. So I think other panel members, if you have anything to add to this, Shehan is there, Amila is there, Nilesh. So what do you think about comms? Is really awesome framework to apply, right?
Yes, Zach, Shehan here. So I always look at comms as I've mentioned this in private conversations where C in comms becomes the capital letter. So we always need to ensure that the culture comes first, and then within the culture we need to develop and groom the culture of automating, getting into lean practices, and basically the rest of it sharing and all of that. So yes, so once you have that going, it becomes a steady ship, and it becomes easy to steer.
Yeah, that's totally understand, because really appreciate the C's always comes first, because without a proper culture, right, we cannot implement those things. Like, even though it doesn't matter if you have a lot of such nice tools, even like paid tools, doesn't matter like if you're not doing it properly. Like that good example, right? If you have like a Lamborghini or any like a good car, and if you're not properly maintaining, or like if your driving skills are very, very low and bad, no point you're having car. Even a Maruti can chase you. So like that. So what about others? Having any thoughts of this?
Yeah, Arshad. So I'm Amila here. Actually, I also think comms is quite a good model when it comes to talking about DevOps, because as the concept as it is, DevOps is quite abstract. In its simplest form, DevOps is mainly about breaking silos between developers and operations, which means trying to stop the back and forth. But there aren't like any concrete ways that DevOps defines like what you should do apart from these guidelines on how to break these silos. So when it comes to what would be some concrete areas to follow, comms model is actually quite useful in my view. And most of the things that we have to do in order to break these silos and improve the continuity of business and improve the speed of delivering business value uh, can be achieved following these different steps in the comms model.
That's great. So any thought from Nilesh?
Nilesh, you're on mute.
Yeah, you guys actually cover most of the organization
Okay.
I've worked with.
Yeah. So next one can go ahead and,
Can you not hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
I'm actually in the hospital. Uh, so yeah, so I've been working with multiple organizations, and uh, so now when Zach and Shehan and everybody explained, they explained how Calm has helped the organizations on the smooth flow and everything on DevOps. So most organizations I've been involved with in consulting and all of that, they didn't have the Calm's framework or nothing, right? They didn't have DevOps or nothing really. They were very infants in this, and then when we introduced the concept of comps, like introduced the culture, the automation, sharing, and all of these things. So we observed how these organizations grew to be more efficient and be better in their software delivery, and then having better products out, and then having more reliable solutions out. And the organization on the IT side is very stable after we implemented it. It's not a overnight process, to be honest. It's can take you 6 to 1 year, or at least 2 years to properly implement this framework for an enterprise that is not very IT savvy or tech savvy and have their IT department, and they are doing a lot of manual work and all of these things. It's very hard to change their mindsets as well in the beginning. But once you do that, there's no going back, and you just cruise it along, and then things become better, and then become fast and really, really well. Yeah.
Thank you, Nilesh.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just to break some ice,
Yeah.
we do have, like I've seen some, we do have some students as well within the participant list. Okay, so can someone please brief the idea of having DevOps and idea of having CI/CD and etc. So what is the primary use of having that? Why you need that, and how to start if you don't have anything? If you want to, like for example, when it's come to a uni project, they don't know how to do it because it's going to be a very small scale. So when it's come to learning that, where to start and what are the resources they do have to start?
So they can unmute and talk, right?
Or
they can put in the chat, or
yeah, they can basically post their messages. So since we do have some questions on that as well, from where to start and why a corporate need that DevOps practice and etc. I appreciate if one of you can explain.
Shall I go first?
Yes, Shehan.
Yeah. For like when I used to go to uni, for example, we didn't have resources like GitHub. So for me, GitHub is like a treasure trove. You have a lot of boilerplate applications that are available. There's so many free tools like simple CI tools like Circle CI, Travis CI. And then there's so much of content, that's free content that's available at the moment, that helps you not just get it from your local IDE to say just getting it running on your laptop or a server. There's other platforms, for example Heroku as well. So it again depends on, for example, what language you're choosing to actually start your project on. For example, Python has been the most the most favorite, especially among students. And my first language was Python as well. So yeah, so I say GitHub mainly, and they're coming up with stuff like GitHub Actions. So it's just creating its own ecosystem, and that becomes a starting point, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, Shehan, for that introduction. So Amila, back to you. So what is your advice to the people who is going to start their career in that DevOps section?
Yeah, so in my point of view, actually, it is very important to understand some of the basic concepts and why we are doing DevOps first, as it is important to understand all the tools, because when it comes to tools and how we implement things, this could change from time to time, because with the tech industry, as most of us are aware, things change in a very rapid way. So the tool that we use today might evolve into something totally different from like next year or in couple of years. So we cannot simply predict how this would evolve. So in my view, it would be most important to understand the basic concept. So as a reference point, I would also recommend the gift that we are giving away today. So it would actually be a quite good starting platform to understand why this DevOps concept is existing, because then only someone would understand what's the point of having all these tools and how to use it. Because without understanding, even for a beginner, this would be a quite difficult, just if he just starts playing with the tools. As Shehan mentioned, right now there are a lot of options to get started with getting familiar with tools, like with GitHub, and there are a lot of free providers as well. So for example, if a student that just getting started wants to understand these practices and tools, best way would be to try out with a simple project that he or she likes, and then trying to implement some of these concepts, because most of the tools are freely available, and most of these are open source. And by trying to implement these concepts using these tools, they would understand what would be the value that it would bring. So for example, if I have a small project, something like a small API, then I could try to implement proper CI/CD pipelines and proper monitoring, and some of these concepts related to DevOps. I can try to implement this in this project. And one other thing is, when you actually try to implement this, you would have a good understanding of when it comes to facing interviews and all that. And also this would be a good thing that you can also highlight in your interviews also, like you can easily give it as a reference point if someone asks what you've done.
Okay. So thank you very much, Amila, for that. Okay. So like our title is, beyond the DevOps. So let's see how this recent pandemic. So we are working from home for like almost 1 year right now. And the pandemic itself taught us a lot of things. Okay. So for example, a lot of companies within Sri Lanka, even the grocery stores and supermarkets got impacted. And unlike good old days, now you have been redirected to some queues to order something as well. So like one from the panel, I would like to know why Amazon doesn't have that sort of queues. You have to wait on, like, you are the 50,000 person within the queue, okay, when it's come to the Black Friday. But when you visit that supermarket within Sri Lanka during like panic buy time, you are getting a queue. Why they are capable? Why the Amazon, eBay is capable of delivering the service with that kind of massive incoming traffic, but why not us?
I'll let Zach take this, or should I take this?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, then you can add on. Yeah, so it's two parts, right? So the first is on the application architecture itself. If the application is not written to be scalable, and if there are limitations in the application.
Let me interrupt for a moment. Okay, So
Yeah.
let's divide this specific question to like two subsets. Why it has happened, why we are getting queues, why sometimes these services are not available. Okay, what went wrong with them. Okay, that is the why part. Then how to do it, how to make it proper. Okay, how a DevOps engineer or a person who is going to transform that business can help to that organization to make it run without having the queues, like waiting queues. Okay, so let's start from the question. So what was the issue, then how to solve that issue, then the ultimate goal, how to achieve that ultimate goal with applying all these tools and technologies we have. Okay, back to you, Nilesh.
Yeah. Okay. So why, like, the problem could be, right? As I said, there could be application limitations on how the application was written. It could be, there could be scalability issues, how uh, application could not be scalable, for example, or it can only handle certain amount of requests per second. And then there could be issues on the infrastructure side or the technologies that they have used. For example, they are using, I don't know what exactly the underlying technology in this particular supermarket chain issue was, but they could be using a MySQL or something that cannot be scalable or can be running as a single instance. And then there could be problems in that end. Maybe the application is scalable, but the database cannot be vertically scaled, or they don't have enough infrastructure or stuff like that, or maybe they have slow queries. There are so many scenarios here that is in play. So in my opinion, a DevOps engineer itself cannot actually, there's no magic wand here to actually fix a solution like this. Otherwise, this particular chain would have hired a bunch of DevOps engineers and fixed this. But instead, there are alternatives or turnaround, because they implemented the whole queue thing later on. If you remember, earlier they didn't have it and the site was down constantly. So these are the workarounds. And mostly I think the scalability stuff, like infrastructure level, on a DevOps engineer level, there are so many things that we can fix if the application is written in a certain way that is, you can scale and manage it properly. So there's this thing called 12-factor apps, and there are certain rules and stuff that you have to write to sort of like write properly scalable applications that would help in this stuff. So if you take Amazon, on the other hand, they have written it in a proper way. The apps are good, and then they have done the scalability, and then they have the comms entire framework implemented. They have the metrics and all of that, and they have auto scaling and all of these things that they have implemented. So with that, they can actually, even on Black Friday, it's not a problem for them to actually scale up and then uh, serve the demand, basically, which I think this particular I think they try to do this, but unfortunately they have application limitations, as far as I know, that actually stop them from doing it. And then this is why they had to actually take a queue system in front, and then forward the traffic according to the queue. That was an additional part that they did. Zach, you want to add to that?
Yeah, because like I have been to a lot of AWS events and a lot of sessions. So I got to know that Amazon having that like 1,000 plus microservices, the Amazon.com, the shopping cart, and imagine how they're managing those things, and very scalable. And believe it or not, they are putting per day, like deploying per day, like it's very hard to believe, like maybe it's 1,000 plus according to them. They're not even the right numbers, but that means like without any downtime, the application is big like that, very microservices architecture. So for example, because I was used to work in an e-commerce agency, because we had these issues. So we know that we always put the deployments at night time. The main issue was the database, because e-commerce sites always we are playing with the money, right? Transactions. And some of the colleagues who have worked with me already in the today session, like they already joined the call, so they know what I'm talking about. So we had these issues, like why the deployment, when we do the testings, we can find that when we're doing the UAT testings, we couldn't unable to found that there's an issue with the database script. So when we're doing the deployment in live, it's a disaster. So mainly for me, I see the database, and yes, but we cannot see like that, because if Amazon is doing it, so that means we can do as well. So it doesn't matter that they are a huge company, you know, they're using the same tools and culture. There are no any rocket science with them. So I believe the best thing is like automate everything, and don't get scared if things get wrong. You just keep with the feedback cycle and go and so on. So for Sri Lanka, like, okay, I think it's okay to add like this. So have you seen a lot of resumes, the DevOps resumes, right, Damit? And all are talking about, okay, we need a DevOps engineer with ELK stack knowledge. I saw one thing like recently, like the DevOps engineer network infrastructure. I have no idea what is like DevOps and network, like very hard to relate that. So no one is asking, have you worked with these best practices, the culture? No one is asking, okay, what is comms even like in Sri Lanka? So that has to like improve really a lot. So I am seeing some chats going on talking about certifications as well. So having a certificate, that doesn't mean you are expert on that. That's like kind of the vendors made to, you know, like make the recognitions. But when I was doing the first AWS certifications, there was no like huge, you know, these training videos and stuff. Had to go through the documentations and pick here and the other videos and have to study it. So now, like, if you follow that course, you can pass it. Trust me, you can pass it. But that doesn't mean. So when it comes to this topic, yes, I worked for like few freelance e-commerce agents in Sri Lanka as well. You know, they edit the code in the production. Okay, they don't even have a dev to test. So I'm not talking about a small agency, like big retail companies. Okay, I was really amazed. Then I had to talk with them and clone, you know, set up a dev environment and UAT. So how come you directly work in the production? So that's one of the reason I don't like PHP, because you can just go and edit PHP on the server. So I feel like it's very it's not a best practice, right? You just log into production and do it. It should be immutable, right? So I think the lack for me, like the lack of knowledge of the basics and the practices, like not the tools. For the tools, so every day we are using a lot of new tools, and reading the documentation, we can do it. But if you don't know the practice and that's a disaster. So for me, like Nilesh also explained, the way they're doing it. So again, I'm saying, like, if Amazon can do it, yes, we can do as well.
Okay, so before I go back to, you know, Amila, let me explain you something. So we are technical guys. Okay, we always consider about the technical stuff. Okay, how this works, and you know, we even fight with the devs sometimes. Okay, mostly. So we used to fight with them there with their code and etc. But we still we do have some engineers who do not understand the aspects of a business. So when it's come to like, let's get that similar e-commerce as an example, because I need to, you know, distribute the knowledge on, you know, how to get onboarded to this specific mindset. Okay, so when it's come to a company, so they e-commerce company or like a supermarket chain, so they always relies on the retention of that customer. So they do offer these cards and etc. They expect to, you know, retain the customer. So when it's come to, you know, the physical supermarket, yes, of course you can go and get anything you want, and you are okay to, you know, be on the queues. But now it is no. Okay, no one would like to go there and, you know, waste their time because of the critical incidents happening within Sri Lanka in terms of COVID. So no one would like to go there and wait for a long time with, you know, unknown people. But when it's come to the digital channels, okay, so if your site is not working, which means you will be losing your customers to another competitor. So which means if your competitor is providing better service than your current one, there is a high chance of you are losing that customer. Because if the supermarket X doesn't have the proper site to operate, and Y is new, and they are having a massive deployment and very good user experience, that X will be losing that customer. Okay, so it is going to be a business impact. So that's why this cloud native stuff, this is all these e-commerce things comes to a buzzword in like to a retail store as well. If you go to like a very small retail store who are doing like sort of, you know, wholesale as well, they might have at least a small, you know, Shopify site right now. Okay, so people are, you know, massively going towards these e-commerce, and they would like to retain these customers. So our job is to coordinate with all the parties like devs, all the PMs and etc. And we have to make that is a proper deployment, and we need to support our business to be on the like customer retention part. Otherwise, not only the business getting impacted, your job also getting impacted. Okay, so when it's come to Amila's side, like I believe he's working at a like payment processing company. Okay, so the scenario is going to be very like worse for him, because it is not a single company. That is a company who is processing payments on behalf of lot of customers. If something gets wrong with that specific payment platform, not only the Amila's company is getting impacted, all the customers will be getting impacted. So the risk is getting high for those kind of industries as well. So back to you, Amila, to extend your explanation about beyond the DevOps.
Actually, it's quite a good topic that you brought up. And since you specifically mentioned about Amazon and Black Friday, I could give you some insights, because in Europe, the company I work for is like the second biggest retailer after Amazon. And Black Friday is quite a huge thing here. Generally, during the Black Friday week, we do close to, for the week, close to 1 billion euros of sales. And the amount of scale is quite huge, I would say. For example, since I'm mostly involved with the payments related part in this, I could give some numbers. Like for a minute, we would be processing around 11,000 orders per minute, and these are just all the completed orders. So it's a massive scale when we are talking about some things like Black Friday. So how this is allowed is because these companies actually think about how can we make customer experience better, and in order to do that, they are actually for example, if I take Zalando as an example, comparing to Amazon, we actually follow most of these DevOps practices and more like the Amazon are also doing. So most of the teams and systems are designed to scale. So when it comes to like how the services are structured, how the teams are structured, usually a team would own set of a specific service area, and then they would be responsible for creating the infrastructure and managing the monitoring, alerting, and developing. All that would be handled by single team. The main advantage of this is this gives like unprecedented flexibility for that team, and they completely own the area. So, and these are generally like very small sections that are broken down from the business area, that are broken down into this set of small teams. I think Amazon also does it, and they along with Google and Netflix is like the pioneers of this. Like what this allows mainly is for these companies to be able to quickly respond to business needs. So for example, like the easiest example would be like if you have a website that would be simple MySQL, using MySQL and PHP, then it would be quite difficult for developers to do some changes or whatever they need to do when the business needs them to do some change. But in order to prevent this and add value faster. What these big companies are doing, it is like they are creating services in a way that multiple teams can collaborate faster, and they are not blocked. So to give a more direct answer to what Damit was asking about the situation in some of the Sri Lankan companies, actually, I recall some time back seeing some of the big chains operating an e-commerce site, just using a WordPress-based template, and they seems to actually do it through some contractor which provides e-commerce solutions. And this was quite a big name in Sri Lanka. So I'm not sure which one you were pointing to, but these sort of situations could uh, create problems if there are a lot of users that comes into the website, and mainly because it would be quite difficult to manage when there are a lot of users in these sort of setups. One other thing I see is in Sri Lanka, it's apart from the technical aspects, there's so far there's not much focus on giving consumer the focus, because consumers has also been rather forgiving, and they accept that websites can be slow. But I guess this could probably change, because some actually seems to want to improve the performance and give better customer value. So as you earlier mentioned, when other businesses provide more options with better usability, then probably be some of the businesses that operate in legacy ways would eventually capitulate as well. But from what I see, actually, it's been not in a way, it's not respecting the customers also, because otherwise they would be providing a better experience for customers.
Okay, thank you very much, Amila, for that introduction. Okay, so that
Damit, I'd like to
yeah.
Answer that question that you had, or like all the questions from starting from Amazon versus say a local supermarket in Sri Lanka. So I think what we need to first see is that there are two different animals, right? For example, Amazon has been predominantly there since 1994, 1995. They've been an online business since the very beginning, whereas the supermarkets, they had their customers coming in all the time, and then all of a sudden their main source of income just stopped during a lockdown. So it has been sort of a it was sort of a rush to get this platform out there for people to order as well. So I think their priority was getting something out there versus having scalability a priority for. And for example, Amazon, I'm pretty sure they have done their distributed systems properly from like scratch. I'm pretty sure they must have redone it over the years as well, like this using different techniques. For example, region wise, they might be having database shards, scaling them as well. And then having the infrastructure as well on AWS. So they have now their own, I mean, as far as I know, AWS, the AWS treat Amazon.com as one of their biggest customers as well. So again, it comes to, and another thing is we underestimate the value and the input of the product team, for example. So product owners, product managers, they play a vital role in getting these up and running. So when you mentioned about competitors, I think there are analytical skills that comes into requirement gathering. It prioritizes according to how the market plays as well. Again, it comes to where like the Sri Lankan supermarkets had to do something because they lost their revenue overnight. People wouldn't come in and get they couldn't come in and get. So yeah, it's a pandemic. So I think they also don't have the resources. For example, Amazon has this massive delivery fleet. They've got drones delivering. They have their own delivery system. They have their own payment gateway system. So yeah, it's been sort of this this kind of rapid change that the Sri Lankan supermarkets, for example, had to adapt to.
Okay, thank you very much for your inputs, Shehan. Okay, so I took that specific supermarket chain example as an a classic example of which got impacted by that pandemic. Okay, so fortunately or unfortunately, we do have one supermarket chain in Sri Lanka which got impacted during the pandemic. They had a like permanent database corruption. But can you believe within under 48 hours, that legacy application got transformed into a cloud native application, and it got changed into a fully scalable application which was able to handle 8 terabyte ingress per day. Okay, so that is actually the power of the cloud computing, the right implementation of the DevOps tooling. So as you can see, you might have heard about dukkha hetuva dukkha vimemaga nirvana. Okay, so we know the dukkha right now. We know the problem. Okay,
dukai.
So then we need to say find out how to solve it. So when it comes to solving an issue, you might have to work with your internal LOBs, line of businesses. You have to talk with your bosses and etc. So the main thing I see within Sri Lankan companies is, okay, these bosses or the higher management doesn't allow these IT guys to go with the modernization of the tools. That's why they are lagging behind most of the time. They don't trust these IT guys, the DevOps engineers and etc. So first of all, what I think is we should educate the people who are there within the business. Okay, so these DevOps guys, these IT engineers, going to help you with your business. Okay, these guys will be serving you, okay, to retain your customers. Okay, next pandemic, during the next lockdown, they will ensure, okay, you will not lose any customers and you will get more customer base back. Okay, so what I see is it is something we have to do. We have to transform the engineers from usual IT engineers to DevOps engineers. Okay, so apart from that, we have to transform the ideology of all this staff, the management staff or the guys who are within that organization. Because I know a very big supermarket chain in Sri Lanka, they suffer the scalability issue just because of their head of IT, the CIO, is keep preventing going from one AWS server to a like cluster. Okay, so how much like the loyal customers like me, okay, we prevented that specific supermarket and we went to that queuing supermarket, because I never visited that supermarket before on online basis. So my favorite supermarket doesn't offer that highest availability and etc. I had no chance. Okay, I had no choice, so I switched. So that's what happened. It might happen to everybody. So as a whole, I might be a single person. Okay, I might be a single person. As a whole, they might be losing like 1,000+ customers, taking customers. I mean, okay.
So you're telling like where the DevOps impacting so these things, right? Yeah, it's so it's totally like it's like if you don't know, like for my maths teacher always tell me like if you don't know calculus, you cannot have even a tea shop like that. So So you understand like DevOps is really, really pivotal. So let's move on to other topics. Like there are cool things to in the agenda. So I think Shehan is willing to share some cool stuff. So over to you, Shehan, and you can go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about having effective postmortems, and I know like some companies, they do it very well. Some companies, they just have the meeting and they go about their merry way doing
Shehan,
their
sorry
thing.
for
So,
disrupting, Shehan. So I
yeah.
think a lot of audience, they have not familiar with this. What's the postmortem? They might thinking, okay, there's a dead body, and they're going to do the postmortem. So can you elaborate a little bit of postmortem?
Yes.
That would be really awesome,
Yeah. So ideally, say for example, let's take what Damit's example of the actual incident when they actually had to implement the queue. So say the website crashed, and you are able to get it back up and running. Say you have a limited set of scalable infrastructure. You are able to get that up and running, but that's not sustainable, right? So you need to go back and actually see what actually happened. And so I'm pretty sure like companies, that it's part of the DevOps culture, where you have an incident response team, an on-call team. We have tools to leverage, for example, VictorOps, PagerDuty, all of that. That itself creates the automation of incident response. And once you have responded to that incident, it usually you have some kind of say a transcript of what happened actually during the incident, what people actually did to rectify that, and then you come in fresh the next day, or even within, depending on how critical the situation is, you have a post-mortem to basically identify, for example, the root cause, the corrective measures that needs to happen, and then ideally you need to discuss about action items, and then prioritize those action items, for example, to for that to not happen again. There's also this buzzword that's around, and especially where I work at Zero, there's lots of talk about building resiliency into the application. So what resiliency basically means is a system would crash down, and it's how fast you would be able to get up and running as soon as possible. So there are things that you can do, like for example, if you talk about the technical side of things, we can have infrastructure provision. There's also again, there's queuing systems. If we go into say small companies that they could use, which I'm pretty sure that's how they came up with having the queue system, so that the system wouldn't crash, right? Yeah, so having an effective postmortem is very vital for in a DevOps culture, for us to move forward, and for example, never repeat an incident. I am pretty sure for people who've been around the DevOps scene, seeing few companies, big companies, where for example, let's take AWS. They had a massive outage of S3, I think, was it this year or last year, due to just one bad misconfig, right? I remember GitLab, for example, also had a massive incident. But if these things keep on happening, that means, from my perspective, they haven't had like a proper postmortem. I'd like to slowly diverge this conversation into where I think Amila was going to talk about observability. So I think we can have proper postmortems. For example, if we have proper observability in the application, and after that, during an incident, for example, we make use of tools like shutops, for example. We can have, for example, incident commanders write in those incident commanders will know who to reach. For example, if it's like a big company where you have, say, a platform as a service there, and then you have different say product engineers who are working, and the communication between them escalated to, for example, the customer side, and then if there's customer impact, how the customer, say the customer representatives, they inform the customer, okay, hey, we have a issue like this, and we are working on it, and then comes in, for example, the status pages that most of the companies use. So yeah, I'd like to slowly take this over to observability. I think that would have been the better place to start. But yeah, I'd like to slowly move into that category.
Yeah, let's then talk about that. So when it comes to talking about observability, I would actually like to bring out another topic also, because this sort of goes hand in hand. I also wanted to touch a little bit about SRE to start with, because some of the recommendations in SRE are actually quite useful. So useful for having better observability also, or like more customer-centric observability. So we've talked about DevOps and the CAMS model, and when it comes to SREs, actually SREs is something that is quite similar in the thought process. So if I try to explain in a simple way, we can consider DevOps is like an interface in a programming language, and SRE would be like the class or this implemented instance of this interface. Because when it comes to DevOps specifies some of the practices and concepts, but does not mandate how this should be done. But when it comes to SRE practices, they share most of the concepts, but SRE goes a little bit ahead in some areas and specifies what should be done in order to have better customer focused delivery. And this is where I want to also talk about some concepts of like service level monitoring. So because SRE is more focused about how the customer experience is, it specifically defines how they should be measured. So it brings out special concepts like service level indicators, which would be some parameters that we define based on our observability metrics. For example, it could be some sort of errors from a backend service. So like if you have an API, one of the SLIs could be 500 thread from this API. So like that. And based on these SLIs, we can define something like service level objective, which would be like how we would measure customer impact and what would be the level of service that would be defined. And SRE specifically covers these ideas, and also if we go more into also specifies some best practices or how best this should be implemented with examples, like what should be observed and what not to be. For example, when it comes to observability, based on the SRE practices, it would be quite important to understand whatever we measure based on how critical it would be for the customers also. Because as engineers, what we would usually do is when we think about observability, it would mostly be system statistics. It would be like GC or memory of the services, or it could be just a CPU utilization. But at the end of the day, ultimate measurement would be how all this plays out and how the customer's satisfaction or how the customer's experience would be based after the customer is using our service. So it doesn't matter if we keep track of all the CPU metrics, GC metrics, memory, but if our request flow is slow and this is not measured, this could be quite bad for the business. So this is why I specifically wanted to bring out this topic. And when we talk more about observability, when it comes to services at scale, it could actually be quite tricky to have better observability. Because let's talk about observability first to start with in a smaller scale. So if I have like one service or two services with a load balancer, it is just easier to figure out what I would need to observe. So usually it would be, I would need to have database metrics and also some metrics endpoint exposing the latencies, request types, how the response codes are, and also if you are running JVM or something, JVM, then metrics related to that, and your load balancer stats. And probably you would also have logs. And general practice so far or throughout the years has been, we would check the logs and these metrics that we would get from a metrics endpoint and try to figure out if something goes wrong. But when it comes to handling services at scale, this would become quite difficult. For example, if I want to identify issue, just checking logs for two services, it's fine, because I then just need to log into two servers, or else I would have some something like ELK stack configured that would be aggregating all these logs. But if I have like 500 services that are interconnecting, even though you have something like ELK, you would still have the logs, but trying to make sense of what is there would be quite difficult, because there would be multiple service calls involved in there. So this is where this new way of observing services come in. So this is called right now called open tracing. Actually, open tracing is specifically defined for cloud native services at scale. So it tries to solve this problem of when you have a lot of services trying to make sense of what is going on with your request. Because if you have hundreds of services and you try to figure out what the request flow, just taking a look at your logs, it could take hours. And in a time of incident, you literally wouldn't have hours, even though you have proper dashboards. So alerts configured, it would still be quite difficult when the number of services go up. So what open tracing brings to the picture here is it gives a way to tag a service request specifically when you code your application. So when you create a client, and so for example, there's a request from service A to service B, and service A is the client, we can create a open tracing span which defines what type of request this is and for what business purpose this is, and what would be the endpoint that this would be calling. And this open tracing then builds this information and aggregates them in a way that you would be able to easily interconnect which service would be calling which endpoint, and also we can easily drill down into multiple service flows. Like even if there are like 10 different integrated service calls, we could easily look into this using this open tracing based mechanisms. And at scale, it is quite a good way, and it makes life easier when it comes to troubleshooting time, because it gives it makes it easy to understand what the request flow is. And also, since Shehan was touching on postmortems and also alerting, one of the other things that could be used with this open tracing based setup is that alerting systems can also be improved in a way, because right now mostly it would be that we would alert if there's a 500 or latency increase, but this could be due to a downstream service that we have, but my service doesn't have a problem. So if we consider two services that are interconnecting and the alert time triggering is due to downstream problem, this could be a lot of alerts, even though my service doesn't actually has a problem. And this would also not be a problem if you only have to handle alerts for like 2 or 3 services or 5 services. But if it is like, if you have to handle alerts for 50 or 100 services, and you get alerted for some other service that you are not responsible for, then it gets quite annoying pretty fast. And with open tracing based setup, what we could do is easily be able to identify who is the actual culprit in the call chain. But I wouldn't try to go too much into detail about open tracing. Probably I'll just leave the floor open to ask questions or talk more about this.
I think, Amila, for the observability, we can talk about another session. I mean, like only for the observability, because it's a very deep topic, right? So, I mean, we
Yeah,
can
there. I guess we could probably use
so
couple of hours for
Shehan,
just observability.
running out of time.
Arshad,
So
I
Shehan
have.
and Nilesh, good.
Yeah, I have a quick question to Amila. I told you I'd ask this on. On tracing, Amila. Yeah, so on tracing, so one of the things that I've seen, like I work mostly with Kubernetes. So when I introduced this concept of service meshes and everything, people just magically think that implementing something like a service mesh would provide you the tracing capability that your application needs without actually changing actual code in the application. But that is not true, is it? Like you have to, in your application level, whatever the framework you use or the database or whatever that you use, you have to you have to capture these traces, and then you have to ship them to whatever the tracing endpoint that you have on the code level. And not you cannot do it on externally to code. Yeah, there are certain things that you have to do. What?
Yeah, actually, so I guess a lot of people have this misconception with
Yeah.
service mesh. They get everything done, and uh, they could just lie around, not having to think about what would happen. So actually, with for the open tracing, I think most of the service mesh frameworks do support some level of open tracing integration. But the problem with this would be then this would not have the detailed enough information that would actually help them make informed decisions, because this would be only what is instrumented from the service measure point of view. So it would probably be something like Envoy or Istio, which would be proxying the request. So then the information would be only from the proxy's point of view. Actually, in order to have more granular view, services has to be properly instrumented with proper span naming and tags. Actually, I could go on more details, like as a best practice for organization, there should be defined set of tracing tags, so tracing best practices to follow, because otherwise it would be impossible. Like if one team follows a different practice and the other team decides, okay, we would like these tags, and some other team would think of, okay, we would use these tags, then it would become chaotic and no one would be able to figure out what the hell is going on. So for organization, there should be a defined framework. So there must be proper governance on what to be implemented, and services has to define these tags properly after they are defined. Like, so it could be which endpoint they are connecting to, or what what the business call is. This is actually a must-have in the service to have information that can be used to make a informed decision. Otherwise, they would have tracing, but it would not be that useful because it's just proxy level information.
Yeah. So actually, like adding into that, like the concept of DevOps is that we get involved from planning level of the project itself, so that using the non-functional requirements and all of this, we give the DevOps input, like how things should be and all of these things, so the developers know exactly what are the things they need to implement and all of that. If we don't get involved in the planning area itself, and if we only get involved in the mid step where the application developers develop the application, they test it, all of that, and they're ready to do deployments, then there's not much the DevOps people can do. Like there's not much magic that we can do to implement something like tracing, or scale it if the application is not written in a certain way, etc. So I think that's something that most of the enterprises and organizations need to understand, because I have seen in Sri Lanka, like a lot of people don't do that. They just have a separate team called DevOps and another separate multiple teams called developers, and then they develop, they collect the requirements, they have their own NFRs, and then at the end of the day, in production there are issues, the scaling issues and all of these things.
Yeah, Nilesh, I would actually like to add in a little bit. Actually,
Yeah.
if they just try to do that, or think that just bringing in the DevOps people at the last moment would magically fix everything, that would actually not work out well in both parties. So because in a basic form of view, they are not following the DevOps concepts at all, or even though they probably have a team called DevOps, it could be the same approach that they had, but just the name was changed. So probably infrastructure team got named to DevOps, and the developer team also stays the same, and but the process of working never changed. This would so this if this happens, then they actually haven't started this cultural practice of trying to work together to bring business value. I guess it would be pretty difficult in that case.
So thanks, Amila. We have a question. We have a question pool. So thought of get a question and we'll answer for that because it's one of the audience asked this, and I'm gonna put this question in here, the chat. So this question is about, can I guarantee a business return for my company for the investment they make to implement DevOps practices? If so, how do I prove that I have achieved said business return to my bosses? So Shehan, Amila, Nilesh, any thoughts about that question?
Okay, so let me take that question. Okay. First of all, DevOps is, if you think get DevOps is just a buzzword, okay, for a very small company, if you are trying to implement DevOps, okay, for a very small scale application, that is not going to work. That is not going to give you any business benefit. Apart from that, what you will be having is kind of a very big cloud bill, and you are ending up with getting fired from your boss. So first of all, you have to always analyze the problems you are currently having, pain points, okay, and how it is being applied to your current business, and then only you can decide, okay, I am having this much of scale, okay, I can manage with this, okay, if I go to the cloud and all with this all the implementation, ELK and all the stuff, okay, on that investment will I get something in return? Okay, if you're having a single server for a very small deployment, I don't think having all these implemented will benefit you, because I know a company who proposed Kubernetes cluster for a WordPress site. So I was in front, it is a very famous company in Sri Lanka. That CTO comes to in front of the customer and he said, okay, everybody going with the Kubernetes, we should implement the Kubernetes cluster to implement this specific WordPress site. So they propose 3-node cluster. Okay. So that is not going to work. So that is my comment. Back to the panel.
Is it even possible to run WordPress properly in production with Kubernetes? I don't think so.
So I think,
But,
yeah, that topic we can talk in agenda. We have a talk a bit about toolings to help emphasize tooling is not DevOps. So I think you guys can share about okay, Kubernetes or such other tools in the market. That doesn't mean you have to implement these things for everything. So what about okay, we'll go one by one, and Nilesh, what do you think about that?
I'm talking about I talk about the question you asked.
No. Yeah, it's related to that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So the business return, like one of the things is that in the chat I said the short answer is the Phoenix project. So in that book itself, they explain how things actually automating all of these things actually help a certain company to actually go big and then go above and beyond their competitors. So having having proper DevOps practices and all of it in the short term, it's not going to do much, and also it depends on the particular organization. So what the business when I have personally spoken with a lot of business director boards and a lot of people. So the first thing they would say is, it works fine right now. I don't need to change anything, right? So from that point onward, it's if the things are actually working right now, it's very hard. But what you need to do is you have to look towards the future, like what the business goals are, and if they are facing issues at the moment and all of these things, which they almost all the time do, There are a lot of manual work that they do and all of it. So I think there was this saying also like the success of the company is measured through the number of deployments that are done in a year, in a month sort of a thing. So the more deployments that you
Excuse
do,
me,
yeah,
Nilesh. Excuse me,
yeah,
Nilesh.
yeah, go
Heshan,
ahead.
can you please kick out the abusing participant? There's a name called Ranjanan Ramana.
Is it,
Yeah,
is
can you
he back
please
again?
kick him out? Yes.
Yeah. So so the more deployments you do, the more patching you do at real time in without a downtime. So this is how these organizations are able to sort of like win their competition, uh, move fast, release more features, win more customers, bring more sales in, and do all of these things together. And starting from what Damit said from the beginning of this session, that is at the end of the day, that's what a business is, right? They need to retain their customers, they need to give their customers the best experience, everything needs to be streamlined. So adding these concepts and adding these things would actually help to retain these things. And also like it would help in the future, like when an error comes, like disaster comes, it comes, you can't stop it. So like there are organizations I personally know that they have these backups and all of these things, but they have never ever tested a recovery, right? So that would happen on the day something actually very bad happens, and a certain company, they actually went through this and they found out that their database backups were they couldn't be restored, like the backups were corrupted, right? So there were issues like that. So so make having these things basically would actually help organizations to have more reliable services and also recover from failures when they happen very soon, so that their businesses don't get affected, and then they don't actually and then win their competition and do all of these things. uh, Shehan, Amila, you guys have anything to add to this?
Yes, I completely agree with you, Nilesh. Now, you did mention one of the accelerate metrics that you mentioned regarding the deployment frequency, um, and regarding that, like I have a small question regarding that, like that metric, for example, does it actually mean that the teams are confident in actually releasing to production, just pressing the button? Or are we actually, for example, introducing more bugs, and we are actually releasing fixes? So sometimes those metrics, it you can't actually use those uh, as they are, and I think we need to use them as a proxy as well, just to understand the whole system, in terms of um, like a holistic view.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shehan. So, Zach, the
Yeah.
answer, short answer for
Yeah.
for your question
Yeah.
would be yes. If the criteria matches perfectly, because for one of my ex employer got a saving of 1.43 million per application with 60% performance increasement by enabling
Ex-employer or
DevOps on a
ex-girlfriend? Ex-employer or ex-girlfriend?
I think some spams are going on, right?
Yeah. So basically, they got around that much of saving per application. So which means yes, you can save a lot if
Sperm
your
line,
parameters are
sperm blood.
Okay. So
You go ahead, Damita.
Sure.
yeah, okay. මම දන්නේ ප්‍රවීන් කියන්නේ කවුද කියලා. අපි මේක මේ කසනවට කරන වැඩක් නෙමෙයි මල්ලි. හරිද? අපි මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට අවබෝධයක් ලබා දෙන්න. හරිද? අපි දන්න දේ උගන්වන්න කරන වැඩක්. කරුණාකරලා බලු වැඩ කරන්න එපා. මේක මොකද අපේ වෙලාව නාස්ති කරගෙන අපිට ළමයි ඉන්නවා, ළමයින් අඬනවා ඇහෙනවා ඇති. හරි? ඒ ළමයි බලන්න නැතුව මෙතන ඇවිල්ලා අපි මේ සිංගප්පූරේ ඉන්නේ අර්ෂාඩ්, එතකොට ෂෙහාන්ලා, අමිලලා පිටරටවල ඉඳලා කනෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ. මේ මිනිස්සු තමන්ගේ වෙලාව නාස්ති කරගෙන මේ ඉන්නේ ලංකාවට දෙයක් කරන්න ඕන හින්දා. හරිද? මටවත් මෙතන ඉන්න කාටවත් මං හිතන්නේ මේක කරා කියලා කිසි ප්‍රතිලාභයක් තියෙනවා කියලා. හේතුව මම ලංකාවේ වැඩ කරන එක්කෙනෙකුත් නෙමෙයි. මෙතන ඉන්න ගොඩක් අය ලංකාවේ කම්පැනිස් වල වැඩ කරන අය නෙමෙයි. කරුණාකරලා අපි මේ කරන්න හදන්නේ ලංකාවේ ඉන්න මිනිස්සුන්ට අනාගතය හදලා දෙන්න දෙයක් කියලා දෙන්න. කරුණාකරලා බාධා කරන්න එපා. බාධා කරනවා නම් මෙතනින් යන්න. හරි? බොහොම ස්තුතියි. You can continue, Arshad.
එහෙනම් කොල්ලෝ අපි ගියා.
Sorry for the infraction. So those are things are really, really unprofessional in the industry, right? So yeah. So just leave it. There will be like people like that. So don't worry about that. We are trying to do something.
I'd like to actually add to what Nilesh was asking for. I totally lost my train of thought because of the distraction. Sorry
go
about
ahead,
Nilesh. Like you mentioned about the backups as well, like people they haven't tested as well. And I found another thing that I did with a few of my colleagues recently. Actually, today. So we did a chaos workshop for our teams. So we actually introduced problems to the system. For example, we used glue that's on Envoy rules to see how they would, actually go about troubleshooting this. So I think those kind of activities are important as well. Like you said, testing out database backups, doing a bit of more drills, for example, in case something happens. And disaster recovery is quite often not prioritized.
Thanks, Shan, for that. So let's get another question from Vic. So when we check these questions, the people have asked, a lot of engineers, a lot of asking about the jobs, the salaries, like how to find overseas jobs and stuff. So this purpose of this event is not about finding the jobs and stuff, but yes, we're happy to help if there's anything. Yes, but we were expecting a lot of, DevOps related questions, like a lot of they have no idea what's going on DevOps. So Nilesh, I think I will ask this question from you since you're more into Kubernetes. What's KTS distribution means?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What's Kubernetes distribution means?
KDS.
Yes, KTS.
Okay. So Kubernetes distribution basically means is that like different vendors provide managed Kubernetes. So Google has GKE, AWS has EKS, and then we can use vWorks, we can use Rancher, Cisco does something. So these vendors, they have different ways of sort of like provisioning Kubernetes clusters. Like for example, Rancher has something called Hypercube, and then Google, AWS, they don't reveal as a control plane, and all of these things, they have different distribution pattern. At the end of the day, they all provide the same sort of like functionality, but it's different. Certain security concepts are different. There are certain things that you can do on these things, but yeah. And there's a conformance also on CNCF, which sort of like you had to validate it with that conformance when you have a KDS. So that then only you will get listed in the CNCF landscape also that you are providing a confirmed sort of like a Kubernetes distribution. If it's not there, then that means whatever the distribution that you're using is not a confirmed one, and then it would have vulnerabilities, it would have issues and all of that. So, But at the end of the day, people are asking me if we have GKE or if we have EKS, will it work on-prem? Yes, so Kubernetes is cloud agnostic. Whoever the provider that the distributor that distributes Kubernetes or gives you Kubernetes doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the same functionality, same APIs. It's just different ways of bundling the Kubernetes stuff. So yeah, there's some noise in the background, so I'm going to go in mute. Shehan, no, Amila, can you?
I think we'll go for another question. Thanks, Nilesh. It's okay, fine.
Zach,
So,
will you be
lot
taking
of
another?
lot of engineers asking, so there is a lot of students are there, like maybe like some engineers from like different domains. So they're asking like where to start if you have implemented DevOps practices, like where to study them, where to learn them. So any tips from you guys? Maybe start from Shehan. Like basically from where to start DevOps.
Yeah, like I said, I think the name of the game is automation. In terms of like getting a technical skills up, and then picking up at least two programming languages, for example, a low level one like Bash, and there's a bit more high level, like for example, Python or say Groovy, for example. If it depends on, again, what organization you get into first as a job, but Python is like mostly used, and then you get yourself familiar with the concept like we mentioned, pipelines. Again, it comes to getting it comes to the name of the game, where it's automation, right? Then getting into one cloud provider. Most of them have like free accounts for a certain period of time, and they love a free tier where you can spin up a few resources and try out. Also, there are a bunch of templated say for example applications that you can deploy on those cloud providers. So the best thing to do is have curiosity first and foremost, and just put them out there and play around and see. And then the more you dig in, the more you find out what different people are using. And yeah, I personally sometimes listen to a few podcasts. There's loads of blogs out there. There are multiple sites. I personally use Cloud Academy, for example. Again, it depends on getting the curiosity, and then always remember the name of the game, which is automation.
Thanks.
I would like to add a little bit more here.
Yeah.
I think Shehan gave a pretty detailed answer. Also, one other option would be like being involved in open source would be quite a good option, because then you would also get to experience from people who are actually working in the industry. And I think for this cloud native foundation based projects, and also Kubernetes itself would be quite a good area if someone is willing to go this path. But I would highly recommend this, because you would also get to know people from these companies and different places throughout the world, and while you explore the tools and practices.
So that's another thing to ask, that DevOps and SRE, friends or foes?
Yeah, it's more like friends, because as I based on the example I used, it's more like DevOps prescribes how it would look like, and in SRE they mention what it actually is and define what it actually is, and a little bit more. So mostly friends.
That's right. So what do you think Shehan? I think you're thinking something. Friends.
Um, it's two different problem sets, but you have similar solutions for it. But the problem sets do overlap as well. For example, getting rid of silos is one of the main things that SRE and DevOps have. DevOps is a more community driven, whereas SRE is Google's their answer to the problem that DevOps is also trying to solve. Yeah, so and in terms of like I saw in the chat where people were talking about the different, like they've gotten themselves a bit confused with the roles of a DevOps engineer and a SRE. I personally believe that an SRE would be more into looking after the health of a production system and making sure that it's reliable. So ideally, SREs, they are software engineers who come into they're predominantly software engineers, whereas DevOps, the systems engineers in the core. DevOps engineers, they help with the flow from the inception of a product or software all the way building pipelines. Whereas I've seen SREs, they wait until something is repeatedly broken and then they jump in. So yeah, that's my take on it.
So basically, SREs, they have these, kind of, they granted to, contact the highest person in any time, because they are like in the front line, right? So basically, they can maybe call a CEO even to get the things done. So it's kind of, I think, if I'm correct, it's implemented by Google, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think
it's Google's version of
Google thing, yeah.
Implementing these concepts.
Yeah. So a lot of new things are coming, so we have to up to date, and we're running out of time actually. So I'll go through another question. I saw someone question. Okay.
I think there's one important question.
Okay, go ahead.
Someone asked about what is the career path for DevOps. I think since we have a lot of students over here, I appreciate someone can answer.
Sorry, we all share our own perspective, right? Because I started my career as a developer. So for DevOps, I believe myself, you have to be a good developer, good engineer. Like you should be able to code, and you should know the practices and the methodologies and everything about the software developer lifecycle and agile methodologies and everything, and same time the infrastructure side as well. So that's where the balance comes. So for me, like, I will always take a 50-50. So it depends on some places. I used to work like 70% infrastructure, 30% development. So currently I'm trying to take the balance and try to learn new languages. And as a career path, if you're a good developer, a good software engineer, that's it. Because I think we couldn't able to talk about infrastructure as code. So if you don't code, you can do the infrastructure as well. So you don't have to be a system engineer anyone. So if you are a good developer, come from a software development environment, I think you can be a good DevOps engineer. But I don't like to call it DevOps engineer. I have seen Shehan's LinkedIn profile. He has used as a DevOps enabler. So I think that's a good way to call it, because people still use DevOps engineer and writing JDs about, okay, that's where people are getting scared. They're asking like, okay, Kubernetes like 5 years old, and they're asking for like 10 years old Kubernetes experience. So that's preposterous, right? So there are people, I mean, students get scared. Okay, I'm scared to get into this field. There are a lot of hidden things are there, but no, it's really, it's not nothing to worry. A lot of, like Shehan said, when we started the career, we didn't have a lot of resources, but a lot of resources are there, a lot of groups are there. And yeah, it start from the beginning. So if you're a good developer, yes, you go through these comms and the Dora Metrics, and read those books. Jim Keen's books are really good. Read those 3 books. There are 3 books I definitely recommend. Before you start from 3 books. They will understand what's going on. And so end of session, we are going to, from DevOps LK, we're planning to give this, not these books actually, you will be getting a new book to the prize winner. So like Shehan said, there are a lot of, okay, now Sri Lanka, we have Spotify. I would like to share some nice podcast playlist in the group as well. And we can do another night podcast as well. So there are a lot of engineers sharing their experience that way and how they came to the career from 0 to hero. So yeah, so for my career path, I start from as a developer and I'm here right now. So it depends on the person. So Shehan, next you can go and share your feedback on that.
Yes, personally, I started out as a release engineer. I don't know if people now have even heard of a release engineer. I was hired as to be the one and only release engineer. The first company that I worked for, they were following Facebook, where Facebook, they don't have a quality assurance. They don't have QA engineers doing, and it sort of like the role sort of morphed into more infrastructure as well, and then we had to hire around. So and my background is basically security, pen testing, and networking. So I wasn't that aware of like the software development life cycle. But then again, you also need to adapt to what's the changes, right? The industry is ever changing. When I started my career, there weren't VPCs. I was discussing this with Zach as well. So VPC wasn't the thing. So I think we need to embrace and adapt to change. Like Zach said, yes, having skilled and having sort of the knowledge of a programming system, especially a programming language, and especially an object-oriented programming language would be helpful. And then it also depends on the organization that you get into. So people like companies, they have their own paths to actually dealing, for example, with different ways of implementing DevOps. You asked about the career path. Again, it depends on different countries as well. So for example, in Sri Lanka, you have these broken down positions from an associate engineer or an intern. Then you have a senior engineer, a tech lead, and then you go into an architect. That is if you're going into the engineering side, right? There comes a sort of a fork where over here in New Zealand, where you come into a senior engineer position and then you become a team lead, where it's sort of like a technical lead role, but it's 50-50. So you have to do a bit of more people management. You have to be more focused on like the key performance indicators, and you're basically involved in a lot of prioritization from say, for example, the engineering GMs, for example. So, and then if you take the people lead side, you become an engineering manager, and then you become a GM, and then all the way to something like a VP. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Shehan. So Amila, maybe you can share something.
Yeah, I could also share a brief thing. Actually, when I started, it's more like I started from more infrastructure related things. I actually my first job was on a data center, and then moved into systems area, and then eventually into DevOps. I think around 2015. But when it comes to career path, I would say now system. So developer, mainly a software developer, so whoever would need to master a programming language anyways, because even systems area has become quite dependent on implementing new automation solutions. So at least mastering Python or Go would be quite useful. And for career development perspective, it would also be a good experience to switch into different roles also. Like if you are from a mainly systems background, it would also give a good experience if you try like if you have the chance to try more of software development, because then you actually understand how the setup works. But it also depends on which company you are in and how your current state, because in some cases this would not be possible. But from the general career path, I guess it would be like starting and then software engineer or DevOps engineer, and then probably senior engineer, and then probably principal engineer, or I could probably move into principal engineer or principal architect roles. Depends on it. This actually heavily depends on what your organization setup is and where you are, because different organizations have quite different setups. And also, if you're into people management, as Shehan says, engineering management also would also be an option, because I think when people work in DevOps, they also develop good collaboration skills and somewhat good communication skills, because they have to generally work with cross team. So they develop this. They have developed the knack of dealing with people more than dealing with code also, because you just don't stick into a single team. That's mostly what I have to add on this part. I guess Nilesh might have to say something here also.
Yeah, I think I agree with Zach, because I also came from a development background. I started my career in as a PHP developer, just like Zach, uh, and then slowly shifted towards JavaScript, Python, Java, Go, and then to DevOps. And my current role as an architect, what I do is uh, basically we have a cloud sort of like a thing, a platform we built that automates DevOps. So you need to know DevOps in order to automate those things. Um, so basically, I found it very easy for me to get into DevOps and understand the concept and all of it, because I had the engineering background. So I was able to understand the logic, how the data is moving, and all of these things. Even when there's a problem, I have this gut feeling and I sort of like know where to look and then sort of like sort out the issue. I think that came from the whole engineering background that I have, because I have the understanding of how software works. um, but yeah, I'm not gonna go much into detail here because we are running out of time. But I agree with what Amila and Shehan both said as well. So, so a small thing for uni students who are starting DevOps. So they're probably going to these enterprises as a DevOps engineer. But in most of the organizations I have seen in Sri Lanka, they don't have proper DevOps practices. So there's a lot of manual work that they do. It's just the name, but they're just doing system administration, sysops. That's it, not really DevOps. So like certifications and stuff, they're not really important. But for a beginner, for a newbie, to grab the concepts and understand stuff, maybe going for a certification and targeting a certification and learning for that certification with good courses on YouTube or Linux Academy or wherever would actually help them understand proper concepts and then actually grow themselves to be good DevOps engineers, and then probably move on from the organization that they are in right now that doesn't have good DevOps practices, and go to an organization would help them pass an interview in a organization that has good DevOps practices, or even maybe go overseas or build your LinkedIn profile or whatever. That's an advice I would give to the uni students.
Correct.
Yeah, I need to add one more thing. Okay, when it's come to the Sri Lankan IT industry, we do have like 3 different sectors. First one is independent software vendors. We call them ISVs. Okay, what they do is they build softwares, custom softwares, and they do sell it to their customers. Okay. Second one is system integrators, where they do all the work for the customers. For example, they install the servers and they implement the DevOps things and they do the monitoring on behalf of the customers. So when it's come to most of the Sri Lankan government institutions, there should be a partner like system integrator, because they don't have a staff. What they do is they basically outsource this. Okay. Third category is the business process outsourcing companies, where they do the offshore software development on behalf of an international company. Okay, so we do have like a lot of famous companies in Sri Lanka within the Orient City who does the big work for international companies. They are the backbone. They do the entire monitoring, they do the implementation, they do the DevOps and everything. Okay, so when it's come to all these 3 categories, you have like 3 different advantages. First one is, if you are working for ISV, you will be always doing the innovations. Okay, you will be assigned to new projects, you will be having your own customers, so you will be presenting it to another customer, airline providers and etc. You basically do it. So we do have like companies who back these entire stock exchange markets and etc. And we do have like education providers and some telecommunication backend providers. Those are kind of ISVs. And system integrators, you will be getting like multiple exposures. Okay, so for one customer, they will implement it on AWS. Some customers Azure, for some customers Oracle Cloud and etc. So system integrator sort of institution, the engineers will get like more like complex, different exposures. Okay, so when it's come to outsource, like business process outsource companies, offshore software development centers, so they will be having the international exposure. So they are working with like lot of countries. They are getting mixed with lot of overseas people, and they will be getting the advantage of communicating with the US people, UK people, Australians, and etc. Because they are working for a multinational company who are doing the software to compatible all around the world. So each of those institutions will have their different advantages when you are working for a while. Okay, so so if you are a guy who is very curious for the technologies, and if you would like to help like multiple customers within different technologies, I would suggest you to join for a system integrator, because they are having multiple customers and multiple issues. One customer might be having some issue. Okay, so every day they will be finding an issue, and if you are a person who is enjoying the fixing issues, I believe I can suggest that specific industry. Okay, so likewise, so we will be having a lot of advantages within all these 3 categories, and it is up to your mind to select what is the best.
What is the best one? Yeah. Thanks, Dharmesh, for that. So we are running out of time. I think the discussion went very, very well. So we would like to give the audience the chance to ask some questions in the chat. They can publish. Just please go ahead and ask your questions if you have anything. So I have some question, like personally they have put my chat. Does programming skills are mandatory to go upper in the DevOps ladder? Because I have networking related background at the university. So let me repeat it again. Does programming skills are mandatory to go upper in the DevOps ladder? Because I have networking related background in at university. So someone can explain that from the panel.
I can probably take up that one.
Okay, Amila.
I wouldn't say mandatory, but with the way industry is evolving right now, I would say it would be an essential skill to have, because after all, what DevOps person would be doing is automating things, and for automating also you would be building new things, and to build new things you would obviously need to master a programming language. So it would be an essential part to progress. Actually, I would also
Thanks, Amila. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I would also recommend, like, even though you are from a networking background, it would be better to focus on software development related aspects as well, because right now there's no like hard difference between these practices, because even developers are expected to at least understand how the infrastructure setup is work, and infrastructure related people are also expected to understand the development workflows. So it would be better to understand that.
Because I have my friends in working with me like the DevOps industry. Some are chemical engineers, some are physical engineers. So networking, I think you're very close. So don't worry.
Yeah,
So
I also have a colleague who is
Yeah.
a language translator. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. So let's give another chance to ask any questions, guys. If not, we can go for the quiz. We'll give like few seconds. If any questions, please put in the chat. If not, we can go for the quiz. So meanwhile,
let's go for the quiz.
Yeah. So this application called Cloak, and how it happens is like I will share a link and a token. You're login, and then there will be questions. So you have to select the right question within a certain time. So it will end of those questions. End of like we can find who's the winner, and we'll be giving this book as a gift. So first of all, get ready your mobile phones. I think if using mobile phones is very easy. Let me share the link with you. It's Kahoot, sorry.
Hey, Zach, what is the game pin?
Yeah, I'm going to share the game pin. Wait. Game pin is loading.
Okay, guys, make sure to take the screenshot of the leaderboard as well.
Okay, you can log in. I can start the game later. So what the rules are like. So please enter your full name. Don't enter, like John, Jack, those kind of names. Just enter your full name, and please make sure once done, please take the screenshot, and please send the screenshot to Shehan Marino. So I hope you can find him on Facebook. So you can send him the screenshot within few minutes. So I can see a lot of joining. I'm not going to join because I already have the book. Good. Only I can see 16. Let me wait more. If you're having any difficulties, please put in the chat.
By the way, if you are kind of a lazy guy like me, you can download the Audible book from Amazon for the same book. Okay. I believe they are having the free one book offer with Audible. If you have already redeemed it, like make sure to create another account and using the same credit card, you should be able to get it as well. So just to bypass the question if you want.
And 17. So only 17 participants. It's good to see a lot of numbers. Shall I wait more? I can start. I'll give 1 more minute. Maybe some are having troubles, right? I think I'll go ahead, right? Because they're in different time zones. Shehan is like almost morning.
Yeah.
So we should not keep him like, okay, you can say 18. Who is this Boo? Okay, guys, if any, if I feel like spam, I'm gonna kick it. Okay. Okay, I think I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and start. Okay, then 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Oh, I'm really sorry. Something. No, that's yeah. Lynn is the correct answer. I'm really sorry, but go ahead. Okay, fine. Okay, that's good. So when Shehan was speaking, he was telling this answer. Wow. So Tulash is leading now.
Zach, you better pronounce the question and the required, item, because for the users who are logging in with browser,
Okay.
can see only some, random like squares, rectangles, and
but it should be mobile friend. I don't know. Okay, okay. I will do it now.
Zach, you can share your screen if possible.
My screen. Okay, let me share my screen.
Yeah, we can't see any questions.
Wait. So you didn't see the questions, right? I'm sorry. So okay,
No.
okay.
Yeah,
Let's reset and start over. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, I'm really sorry, guys. I thought I was sharing. So let's restart. Okay. Shehan, can you give me the permission to share the screen?
So you will be giving a new game pin, is it?
Yes, I'm giving you gameplay now.
Okay.
Okay, I think you guys can see the pin, right? It's 415.
Can you speak it out?
It's 415-5212.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Let's wait more because last time they're like 19 plays.
We have 32 still in the call. I'm guessing the rest of them aren't interested in the book.
Seriously, it's a good book, guys.
So, Zach, that book used to be in yellow color. Now it is white, is it?
No, the yellow is the DevOps handbook. This is the white one.
Ah, okay.
There are 3 books. Yeah. You want to talk about the DevOps book? Yeah. I think the 19 plays are here. Shall I start then? Because last time was a 19 there.
Yeah, you can start.
You start, right? All can see my screen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, new person. Yeah, that's good. 20. Okay, I'm going to start then. Sure, now you can see, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me.
Yeah, that's a wrong answer, but fine. Only Nilesh is correct. That is just for fun.
DevOps is about containers, Kubernetes, Dockers. That is for rectangle. Sorry.
Wow. Only one person clicked correct answer.
Let's pronounce the question because
Okay.
they might
No, the
be
thing
having
is,
a
it's
browser.
the part of the game is like it's checking your
Okay, time based.
time base. Yeah. So when did Amazon start? Good. Tulasha is still leading. So DORA stands for.
This needs an answer called Dora the Explorer. You missed that out. Right.
Shehan is leading.
Oh, Shehan.
The 12 factors. So one of the item is a one from the 12 factors. So wow, good.
Who's leading? Oh,
Shehan is on fire.
I'm just playing. I'd like to give it to the next person.
Okay. Yeah. I think you already read the book, right? Yeah. Yes. First AWS infrastructure service. So what was the first tool that AWS came up with? Correct. What can be done to prevent feature failures from incidents? So we were talking about this. Okay, last one. Oh no, this is ninth one. What are the 3 pillars of observability? Wow. Shehan on fire.
I didn't answer the question.
Oh, really? MTTR stands for. Where's the last one? Okay. So Situm. So Shehan said he's gonna give the chance to second person, right? Because he already had. So well done, Situm. So Situm, please take a screenshot from your the device you're playing right now. Take a screenshot and send ASAP to Shehan
Dharmasena.
Shehan Dharmasena. Please send it ASAP. So and please put your address, phone number, and the postal code. I'll be shipping from Singapore, so please put all the information there. So I will put a note in the group once I ship the book. Okay. So well done, Situm. I hope you all enjoy this session today. And really sorry about the interruption happened today. Like there are some unprofessional things happen. So really sorry on behalf of the DevOps community Sri Lanka. And yeah, so end of the day, like we all dedicate our time to improve this our industry, because it will be helpful for your future and career. So Shehan, for Shehan's time, I think it's almost 3 a.m. there in New Zealand. For me, it's almost 12 o'clock in Singapore. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. So any last moment things to add, Shehan and Nilesh, Dami?
Yes, I'd like to especially thank Nilesh because he's doing this session from the hospital.
Yeah.
So yes, kudos, Nilesh. And this is like the first session of many. So I hope we get to talk more into like the technical stuff in our next sessions. And since this was the first one, we kind of winged it. So we hope to have the questions and a more structured program next time.
Yeah.
So on behalf of DevOps Sri Lanka community, I would like to thank Shehan, Nilesh, Zach, and Amila Kumaranayaka for their valuable time and contribution towards improving, like helping Sri Lankan students and the community. And I would like to thank Shehan, Asit, Ruan, and the community members who supported me and the entire community with organizing this specific event. Finally, I think we are planning to come up with like series of these panel discussions rather than specific to a single subject. Let's hoping to see you again back in within 1 week time. Thank you very much for your time and good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hope you got something out of this.
Yeah. So have a nice day. Just bye-bye.
Bye.